Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is Macbeth by William Shakespeare. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. Written in the early 1600s, Macbeth is one of William Shakespeare's most famous tragedies, a dark tale of ambition, fate, and the corrupting power of unchecked desire. Inspired by historical events, the play dramatizes the rise and fall of a Scottish nobleman, Macbeth, who is driven to murder and tyranny by prophecy and his own thirst for power. Unlike some of Shakespeare's more philosophical works, Macbeth is fast-paced and intense, immersing audiences in a world where supernatural forces and human ambition collide with devastating consequences. The play is believed to have been written during the reign of King James I of England, James VI of Scotland, who had a deep interest in witchcraft and the supernatural. This fascination is reflected in Macbeth's three witches, whose cryptic prophecies set the entire tragedy in motion. Shakespeare's portrayal of regicide, the murder of a king, also aligns with James's concerns about threats to his rule, particularly after the Gunpowder Plot of 1605. Despite its historical inspirations, Macbeth is not a strictly factual account of Scottish history. Shakespeare took great liberties in dramatizing events, blending fact with fiction to craft a gripping narrative. The play has long been associated with superstition, with actors and directors often referring to it as the Scottish play, to avoid the supposed bad luck that comes with speaking its name in a theater. Now, let's begin our journey into Macbeth, where prophecy, ambition, and fate lead to one of the most compelling and harrowing tragedies in literature. Amidst the rolling thunder and flashes of lightning, three shadowy figures emerge onto a desolate Scottish heath. Their forms are twisted, their voices eerie, and the very air around them crackles with an unnatural energy. They are the Weird Sisters, witches who stand outside the bounds of time and fate, their words laced with riddles and prophecy. As the storm rages, they chant in unison, their cryptic message echoing through the winds. Fair is foul, and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, they vanish, leaving only the storm in their wake. Not far away, Scotland is in turmoil. A brutal battle is being fought against rebel forces led by MacDonald, a traitor who has allied himself with foreign invaders. The valiant General Macbeth, alongside his loyal friend Banquo, charges into the fray, cutting through enemy lines with ferocious skill. Macbeth, a warrior of unmatched prowess, fights with the fury of a man possessed, slashing through MacDonald's ranks until he reaches the traitor himself. Without hesitation, he cleaves MacDonald from navel to jaw, displaying the kind of brutal efficiency that makes him a hero on the battlefield. News of Macbeth's victory reaches King Duncan of Scotland, who is deeply impressed by his general's valor. A wounded captain, barely able to speak through his pain, describes Macbeth's heroism in vivid detail, calling him Brave Macbeth. Well, he deserves that name. The battle is not yet over, however, as another traitorous force, led by the Thane of Cawdor, threatens the kingdom. But Scotland's defenders prove victorious once more, and Macbeth's loyalty and strength are rewarded. Duncan decrees that Macbeth shall inherit the title of Thane of Cawdor, stripping it from the treacherous noble who betrayed him. As Macbeth and Banquo make their way home from battle, they encounter the witches upon the heath. The strange sisters, cloaked in mist and mystery, greet Macbeth with 3 titles. All hail, Macbeth. Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis. Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor. Hail to thee that shalt be king hereafter. Their words strike Macbeth like a bolt of lightning. He knows himself to be Thane of Glamis, but the title of Thane of Cawdor belongs to another, at least as far as he knows. And as for kingship, the idea seems unthinkable, and yet the words of the witches burrow into his mind, planting the seed of ambition. Banquo, skeptical but intrigued, asks the witches about his own fate. They respond with a riddle, telling him that while he shall never be king himself, his descendants shall sit upon the throne. Lesser than Macbeth and greater, they proclaim, not so happy, yet much happier. Banquo presses them for answers, but before he can demand more, the witches vanish into thin air, leaving the 2 warriors stunned in their wake. As they process what has just happened, messengers from the king arrive with astonishing news. Macbeth has indeed been granted the title of Thane of Cawdor. The witches' words are coming true, and with that realization, something shifts within Macbeth. If their first prophecy has proven accurate, might not the final one, that he will become king, also come to pass? The idea gnaws at him, tempting him, awakening a hunger he has never acknowledged before. Banquo, ever cautious, warns Macbeth that the witches may be tricksters, that their words may lead them toward destruction rather than greatness. And oftentimes, to win us to our harm, he muses, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles, to betray us in deepest consequence. But Macbeth is already deep in thought, his mind racing through possibilities he never dared entertain before. At the royal castle, King Duncan welcomes Macbeth and Banquo with open arms, heaping praises upon them for their loyalty and bravery. Duncan declares that he will travel to Macbeth's castle at Inverness, an honor that should bring Macbeth nothing but pride. Yet, beneath his polite exterior, Macbeth is uneasy. He has seen the path before him, and it is a dark one. If he is to be king, as the witches have foretold, what must he do to make it so? It is at Inverness that the final push toward destiny begins. Lady Macbeth, upon reading a letter from her husband detailing the witch's prophecy, feels a surge of excitement and determination. Unlike her husband, she has no hesitation, no moral conflict. She sees the path to power clearly, and she is ready to take it no matter the cost. As she stands alone, contemplating the future, she calls upon dark forces to strip her of weakness, to fill her with cruelty, to make her capable of the ruthless deeds that must be done. Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, she cries, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe top full of direst cruelty. Macbeth soon arrives, and Lady Macbeth wastes no time in stoking the fire of ambition within him. She sees the hesitation in his eyes, the uncertainty in his words, and she refuses to let it take root. She taunts him, questions his manhood, and assures him that fate is within their grasp, but only if they dare to reach for it. Duncan will be at their castle that very night. The opportunity is perfect. All they must do is act. Macbeth wavers, torn between his loyalty and his desire. The thought of killing Duncan chills him, but the prophecy, the ambition, the whispers of his wife, all of it presses down upon him. In the darkness of his chamber, he wrestles with his own soul, asking himself if he can truly go through with it. But the decision is already made, even if he does not yet fully realize it. The wheels of fate have begun to turn, and there is no stopping them now. Night falls over Inverness, and And within the cold stone walls of Macbeth's castle, fate tightens its grip. King Duncan, oblivious to the storm gathering around him, rests in his chamber, trusting in the hospitality of his hosts. The air is thick with tension, unseen but palpable, as Macbeth paces the corridors, his mind a battlefield of doubt and ambition. He has resolved to kill Duncan, or at least, Lady Macbeth has resolved it for him, but the weight of the act looms over him like a shadow. Duncan is not just a king, he is a good and just ruler, a man who has rewarded Macbeth with honor and trust. Killing him is not simply an act of ambition, it is a crime against nature, a betrayal of everything Macbeth has ever sworn to uphold. And yet, the promise of power, the whisper of the witch's prophecy, and the relentless urging of his wife push him ever closer to the edge. Lady Macbeth, emboldened and unshaken, finds her husband faltering. She watches as doubt flickers in his eyes and steps in without hesitation. She mocks his weakness, calls his manhood into question, and accuses him of cowardice. "Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself?" she asks, her voice sharp as a blade. She reminds him that he had sworn to do this, that if he were truly a man, he would act. To Lady Macbeth, hesitation is not wisdom, it is failure. Macbeth protests, arguing that Duncan has honored him and that ambition alone is not reason enough for such a crime. But Lady Macbeth will not hear it. She speaks of her own ruthless resolve, saying that had she sworn to do so, she would have dashed the brains of her own infant rather than break a promise, as he now threatens to do. Her words cut deep, stripping away the last remnants of Macbeth's resistance. Seeing his resolve weaken, she lays out the plan. Duncan's guards will be drugged into a deep sleep with wine, leaving the king defenseless. Macbeth need only slip into his chamber, take the daggers from the sleeping guards, and do what must be done. The blame will be placed on the guards, who will wake to find their hands stained with blood, unable to explain the crime. It is a perfect plan, simple and deadly. Still, Macbeth hesitates. He sees the dagger in his mind before he ever touches it, a vision conjured by his fevered thoughts. Is this a dagger which I see before me, the handle toward my hand? He reaches for it. But there is nothing there, only the illusion of a weapon, the physical embodiment of his darkest intent. The vision unsettles him, but it also drives him forward, confirming that his mind is already committed, even if his soul resists. The hour is upon him. Steeling himself, Macbeth moves toward Duncan's chamber. The castle is silent, save for the hoot of an owl, the supposed herald of death. Time itself seems to hold its breath as he slips inside. The king sleeps soundly, unaware of the figure that now stands over him. Macbeth's grip tightens around the dagger. His heart pounds in his chest. There is no turning back. The deed is done. Macbeth emerges from the chamber, his face pale, his hands slick with blood. He is shaken, his mind already unraveling under the weight of his actions. He stares at his hands as if they belong to someone else, as if the blood upon them has changed him into something unrecognizable. He cannot bear to look upon what he has done, cannot return to the chamber to plant the daggers upon the guards as planned. Lady Macbeth, however, is unmoved. She takes the daggers from him, scolding him for his weakness, and does what he could not. When she returns, she finds him paralyzed, speaking in riddles of his own making. "Methought I heard a voice cry, 'Sleep no more.' Macbeth does murder sleep." He is unraveling before her eyes, but there is no time for such weakness. She forces him to wash the blood from his hands, telling him that a little water clears us of this deed. If only it were so simple. A knocking at the castle gates shatters the moment. Macbeth freezes. His mind races with thoughts of discovery, of consequence, of fate closing in. But Lady Macbeth remains composed. She leads him away before his panic can betray them. The night is over, but the nightmare has only just begun. At the gates, the porter stumbles to answer the knocking, his mind clouded with drink. He mumbles to himself, imagining he is the gatekeeper of hell, unaware of how fitting the comparison is. When he finally opens the door, Macduff and Lennox stand outside, seeking audience with the king. Macduff, loyal to Duncan, is the one who discovers the horror within. His cry of alarm rings through the halls, waking the castle. Oh, horror, horror, horror! Tongue nor heart cannot conceive nor name thee. The murder of a king is not just a crime, it is an act against the very order of the universe. The world itself seems to reel from the offense. Chaos erupts. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth feign shock, playing their roles masterfully. Macbeth, in a display of supposed fury, kills the drugged guards before they can protest their innocence. It is a calculated move. Dead men tell no tales, but it also raises suspicions. Why did he act so rashly? What was he hiding? Banquo, ever wary, takes note, though he says nothing for now. Duncan's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, quickly realize the danger they are in. If their father was murdered in his sleep, who is to say they are not next? They make the fateful decision to flee Malcolm to England, Donalbain to Ireland. Their escape is wise, but it also makes them appear guilty. With no other suspects, the nobles turn to Macbeth. The man who defended Scotland, the man Duncan had honored, the man who now stands unchallenged as the next in line. Crowned King of Scotland, Macbeth should feel victorious. He has achieved everything the witches foretold. He has climbed higher than he ever dreamed, and yet peace does not come. The throne feels unstable beneath him, his crown heavier than he expected. Duncan's blood has dried, but it is not so easily washed from his conscience. There is one more problem, one more threat. Banquo. Banquo was there when the witches spoke. He heard their words. And though they said Macbeth would be king, they also prophesied that Banquo's descendants would inherit the throne. This thought gnaws at Macbeth's mind, turning his triumph into paranoia. If Banquo's line is destined to rule, then Macbeth has only stolen a moment of power, borrowed a crown that does not truly belong to him. He cannot allow that. The witches had spoken one truth: Macbeth is king. But he will not let them decide what happens next. Fate is no longer something he will wait for. It is something he will take into his own hands. And with that, another murder is set into motion. The throne of Scotland now belongs to Macbeth, but the victory is hollow. Though he wears the crown, it does not sit easily upon his head. The witch's prophecy still lingers in his mind. Not only had they foretold his kingship, but they had also promised that Banquo's descendants would rule after him. Macbeth cannot ignore this. If Banquo's line is truly destined for the throne, then Macbeth's reign is nothing more than a brief, stolen moment. He has killed to gain power, and now he must kill again to keep it. Paranoia coils around Macbeth like a serpent. He begins to see Banquo not as a friend, nor even as a loyal subject, but as a threat. Banquo had been there when the witches spoke, had heard their words, had even questioned them. And unlike Macbeth, Banquo does not act on their prophecy. He remains honorable, unwilling to stain his hands with blood to fulfill fate's promise. This, more than anything, unnerves Macbeth. Banquo is a man of principle, a man whom others respect, and worst of all, a man whose sons are fated to rule. At the castle, Macbeth invites Banquo to a great feast, a celebration of his newly won kingship. He speaks warmly, as if nothing is wrong, but every word is laced with calculation. He inquires about Banquo's plans for the evening, pressing for details. Banquo, ever the warrior, intends to go riding with his son Fleance before returning for the banquet. Macbeth smiles, nods, feigns good cheer, but the moment Banquo leaves, his mask slips. The decision is made. Banquo and his son must die. Macbeth seeks out 2 men, assassins willing to spill blood for a price. He does not command them outright, but rather manipulates them, twisting their perception of Banquo. He paints Banquo as their enemy, as the cause of their hardships, until their resentment grows into a willingness to kill. Macbeth has learned much since Duncan's murder. He will not wield the knife himself this time. Instead, he will let others do his bidding while he plays the part of the gracious king. Night falls, and Banquo rides with Fleance along the darkened paths outside the castle. There is no warning before the attack, only the sudden rush of shadows, the glint of daggers in the dim light. The assassins strike, and Banquo, though taken by surprise, fights back. "Oh, treachery! Fly, good Fleance, fly, fly, fly," he cries, using the last of his strength to shield his son. Fleance flees into the night, escaping into the darkness, while Banquo's body crumples to the ground. The assassins have done their job, but not completely. One target still lives. When the murderers return to report their success, Macbeth's satisfaction is shattered by the news of Fleance's escape. He had wanted them both dead. He had wanted an end to Banquo's bloodline. Now, Fleance is out there, a living reminder of the prophecy, a seed of future ruin. But there is no time to dwell on what is unfinished. The feast is beginning, and Macbeth must play his part. He greets his guests, weaving through the crowd, smiling, laughing, masking the storm inside him. Lady Macbeth watches him carefully, aware that something is amiss. She, too, is troubled. The crown was supposed to bring them peace, yet Macbeth's mind is more restless than ever. And then, horror. As Macbeth turns to take his seat, he finds it already occupied. Banquo sits at the table, his body pale, his eyes lifeless, his presence a silent accusation. Macbeth's breath catches. His heart pounds. The room spins. He tries to look away, but Banquo is still there, bloodied, staring, a ghostly specter only Macbeth can see. The feast grinds to a halt. The guests watch in confusion as their king recoils, his face contorted with fear. "Thou canst not say I did it. Never shake thy gory locks at me," Macbeth cries, his voice rising, his composure shattering before their eyes. Lady Macbeth moves swiftly, stepping in to contain the situation. She laughs, dismissing her husband's outburst as a momentary illness, an affliction of the mind. "Sit, worthy friends," she urges the guests. "My lord is often thus, and hath been from his youth." But Macbeth cannot regain control. The vision taunts him, sends him spiraling further into madness. His words become frantic, his paranoia exposed for all to see. The nobles exchange uneasy glances. Whispers spread. Is this the man who rules Scotland? Is this a man fit to be king? Lady Macbeth, sensing disaster, calls an abrupt end to the feast, sending the guests away before Macbeth's unraveling can do further damage. Alone with his wife, Macbeth collapses into thought. He cannot stop now. He cannot rest. He cannot afford to hesitate. If Banquo's ghost haunts him, what other dangers lurk unseen? He has already killed Duncan. He has already killed Banquo. Why stop there? He must go further, strike harder, ensure that no one can take the throne from him. There is only one place left to turn: the witches. The last time he met them, they spoke in riddles, tempting him with a glimpse of the future. But that was not enough. Now he needs more. Now he must have certainty. He will seek them out, force them to answer him, demand to know what is to come. If fate will not serve him willingly, he will bend it to his will. And so, as the shadows of the night deepen, Macbeth sets forth, descending into the realm of the supernatural once more. Darkness hangs thick over Scotland as Macbeth rides into the night, his mind a storm of fear and determination. The ghosts of his crimes whisper in the wind, but he does not turn back. He will seek out the witches, demand answers, force fate to reveal itself. He is no longer the hesitant man who once questioned their words. He is a king now, and kings do not wait for fortune to unfold. They seize it. The witches await him in the wild, their presence felt before they are seen. The air hums with an unnatural energy as he approaches. They no longer greet him as before, no longer speak in riddles meant to tempt. Instead, they sense what he has become, what he is willing to do. He does not need persuasion. He comes with blood on his hands, with the weight of the crown pressing upon him. He comes desperate, and desperate men are the easiest to manipulate. "Hail, Macbeth, hail, King," they chant, their voices slithering through the air like smoke. He demands to know his fate. Who stands against him? Will Banquo's son return to claim his throne? Is his power secure? The witches respond, but not with simple words. They call upon deeper forces, summoning visions that flicker like flames in the darkness. The first apparition rises before him, a helmeted head, severed, dripping with blood. It speaks, "Beware Macduff, beware the Thane of Fife." Macbeth stiffens. He had not considered Macduff before, but now suspicion takes root. If Macduff is a threat, then the solution is simple: Macduff must die. Before he can dwell on this, another vision appears, a child soaked in blood. "None of woman born shall harm Macbeth," it declares. Macbeth exhales, his fear momentarily soothed. If no man born of a woman can harm him, then he is invincible. Macduff may be dangerous, but he cannot kill him. No one can. Then, the third apparition, this one a crowned child, holding a tree in its hand. Macbeth shall never vanquished be, until great Burnham wood to high Dunsinane hill shall come against him. Macbeth laughs. Trees do not move. Forests do not march. He sees now that his throne is safe, his power unshakable. The witches have told him what he needed to hear. He cannot be killed by any man, and he will reign unchallenged unless the impossible occurs. But there is still one more question, one prophecy left unanswered. He demands to know, will Banquo's bloodline still take the throne? The witches hesitate. Then, without warning, the air shifts and a new vision unfolds. He sees a long line of kings, each bearing Banquo's likeness, stretching endlessly into the future. Banquo himself appears at the end, smiling, his ghostly presence mocking Macbeth from beyond the grave. Rage floods through Macbeth. He has won the throne with blood, but it is not enough. If Banquo's line will rule, then he has only secured a kingdom for another man's descendants. He cannot allow this. He will not allow this. The visions fade, and the witches vanish into the darkness. But the damage is done. Macbeth's paranoia flares into full-blown tyranny. The witches have named Macduff as a threat, so Macduff must be eliminated. And Banquo's heirs still pose a danger, so if Fleance still lives, Macbeth will hunt him down. But Macduff has already acted. Suspecting Macbeth's treachery, he has fled to England, joining forces with Malcolm, Duncan's son. Macbeth sees this as treason, and his mind leaps to the most brutal retaliation imaginable. If Macduff is beyond his reach, then he will strike where it hurts most. At Macduff's castle, Lady Macduff and her children remain unaware of the horrors about to descend upon them. She does not understand why her husband has left, why he has abandoned them in a time of uncertainty. She speaks with her son, trying to reassure him, but there is little comfort to be found in a world that has become so dangerous. Then the murderers come. They arrive with steel and cruelty, with no hesitation in their hearts. The castle is filled with screams as they cut down Macduff's family, killing his wife, his children, everyone who bears his name. It is not a battle, it is a massacre. Blood stains the halls, innocents crushed beneath Macbeth's madness. News of the slaughter reaches Macduff in England, and grief crashes over him. He is shattered, but not broken. He swears vengeance. He will not let Macbeth's tyranny continue. Malcolm, too, now prepares for war, gathering an army to march on Scotland. Macbeth, back in his castle, feels no remorse for the atrocity he has committed. He believes himself untouchable. He has murdered his way to the throne and eliminated his enemies before they could strike him down. But the shadows around him are closing in. His grip on power has come at a terrible cost. He has enemies abroad, and at home, fear and suspicion breed rebellion. Even those who once stood by him now whisper in the dark. And Lady Macbeth, his partner in crime, no longer stands as strong as she once did. The bloodshed is catching up to her, the ghosts of the past creeping into her mind. Where once she guided Macbeth with ruthless clarity, now she is slipping into madness, haunted by the stain of Duncan's murder, the endless parade of death they have unleashed. The prophecy has set everything in motion. Macbeth believes himself secure, but the forces gathering against him are stronger than he realizes. His reign is built on blood, and blood will be its undoing. Darkness and death have become the foundation of Macbeth's reign, but his kingdom is crumbling beneath him. The more blood he spills, the more enemies he creates, and the walls around him are closing in. Macduff has fled to England, raising an army with Malcolm, Duncan's rightful heir. The nobility of Scotland, once wary but obedient, now whispers of rebellion. Fear grips the land, not just among Macbeth's enemies, but among his own people. His rule is no longer one of respect, it is one of terror. Yet Macbeth does not see the danger. His mind is consumed with the prophecies, his belief in his own invincibility. None of woman born shall harm him. He will not fall until Birnam Wood moves to Dunsinane. These words echo in his mind, reinforcing his belief that fate itself protects him. He is a tyrant, but a tyrant who believes himself untouchable. But not all in the castle share his confidence. Lady Macbeth, once the iron force that pushed him toward power, is now breaking beneath its weight. The blood they have spilled does not wash away. It clings to her mind, an endless stain that will not fade. At night, she wanders the halls of Dunsinane, lost in her own madness. Servants whisper of her strange behavior, her eyes open but unseeing, her hands constantly rubbing together as if trying to cleanse them of something invisible. A doctor is summoned to observe her, but there is no cure for the sickness of the soul. In the dead of night, Lady Macbeth begins to speak, unaware of those who listen. Out, damned spot. Out, I say. Her voice is thick with guilt, her hands moving feverishly as though scrubbing away the blood of Duncan of Banquo, of Macduff's family. Who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him? She relives the night of Duncan's murder, the weight of her crimes now unbearable. What? Will these hands ne'er be clean? The doctor watches in silent horror. This is not an illness of the body, it is an affliction of the mind. What's done cannot be undone, she murmurs, lost in the echoes of the past. The doctor knows that she is beyond help. The weight of her sins will drag her down deeper and deeper until there is nothing left of the woman she once was. Meanwhile, Macbeth prepares for war. News of Malcolm and Macduff's advancing army reaches him, but he scoffs at the threat. He clings to the witch's words like a lifeline. No man of woman born can harm him. The forest cannot march against him. He will fight, but he does not fear. His soldiers, however, do not share his certainty. Whispers spread through Dunsinane. The once loyal thanes begin to slip away, abandoning their posts, fleeing before the battle begins. Macbeth does not care. Let them go. He needs no army when fate itself protects him. But fate, it seems, is beginning to twist against him. In the English camp, Malcolm devises a strategy. As they approach Macbeth's stronghold, they will cut branches from Burnham Wood and use them as camouflage, disguising their numbers. From afar, it will seem as though the forest itself is moving toward Dunsinane. The prophecy is coming true. Inside the castle, Macbeth receives the report. I looked toward Burnham, and anon, methought, the wood began to move. A chill slithers down his spine. He shakes his head. Impossible. The witch's words were not meant to be taken literally, and yet it is happening. Burnham Wood is moving. The impossible is becoming real. For the first time, doubt grips Macbeth, but it is too late to turn back. He will fight to the end, for there is no other path left to him. Before the battle, another devastating blow strikes him, news of Lady Macbeth's death. She is gone. Whether by her own hand or by the weight of her madness, she has slipped from this world, leaving Macbeth alone with the kingdom they killed to claim. He stands in silence, his thoughts sinking into the depths of despair. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, he mutters, his voice hollow, staring at nothing. Creeps in this petty pace from day to day. Life has become meaningless. His victories are dust, his crown a curse. He has killed for power, but what does he have now? His wife is dead, his enemies are at the gates. His people have abandoned him, and yet he must fight. Blow, wind, come rack, at least we'll die with harness on our back. With nothing left to lose, Macbeth steels himself for the battle to come. The battle is upon him. Macbeth, clad in armor, grips his sword with white-knuckled intensity. The walls of Dunsinane tremble with the sounds of war, shouts of soldiers, the clash of steel, the desperate cries of the wounded. The air is thick with smoke and death. But Macbeth, even now, clings to the witch's prophecy. The forest may have moved, but no man of woman born can harm him. He is still invincible. The gates of Dunsinane burst open as Malcolm's forces storm the castle. Macbeth cuts through enemy soldiers with terrifying efficiency, his strikes fueled by rage and desperation. The battlefield becomes a slaughterhouse, and for a moment, it seems as if he might hold them back. But the tide is turning. His men, those who have not already fled, fight half-heartedly. Many surrender. Others are cut down where they stand. The battle is slipping from his grasp. Then, amidst the chaos, a voice rings out a name that chills Macbeth's blood. Where is the usurper, Macduff? Macbeth turns, eyes scanning the battlefield, and there he is, cutting through soldiers like a man possessed. Macduff, the man who lost everything because of Macbeth's ambition. The man whose wife and children were slaughtered in cold blood. He fights not just for Malcolm, not just for Scotland, but for vengeance. And he is coming for Macbeth. The two men lock eyes across the battlefield. Macduff charges, sword raised, fury burning in his every step. Macbeth does not hesitate. He meets the attack with savage force. Their blades clash in a fury of steel and sparks. The weight of all their pain, all their losses, collides in every strike. Macduff fights with the strength of his grief. Macbeth fights with the madness of a man who has lost everything. "You are wasting your time," Macbeth snarls between blows. "No man of woman born can harm me." Macduff does not stop. His blade presses harder. His anger fuels him. "Despair thy charm," he shouts. Macduff was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. Macbeth freezes. The words strike like a dagger to his heart. This was the truth hidden in the witch's prophecy. Macduff was not born in the natural way. He was cut from his mother's womb before birth. He is not of woman born. He can kill Macbeth. For the first time, true fear grips the tyrant. His invincibility was a lie. The prophecy has betrayed him. He is no god. He is no immortal king. He is just a man standing on the edge of death. Macduff does not hesitate. He lunges, his sword slicing through Macbeth's defenses. Macbeth staggers, blood blooming from the wound. He tries to fight back, but the strength has left him. He sees his fate now, as clear as if the witches themselves were whispering it to him. Still, he will not beg. He will not yield. If he must die, he will die as a warrior. And so, with one final blow, Macduff strikes him down. The tyrant king falls. The reign of Macbeth ends in blood as it began. Across the battlefield, the fighting slows. Word spreads. Macbeth is dead. His soldiers throw down their weapons. The war is over. Scotland is free from his rule. Macduff raises Macbeth's severed head for all to see. "Behold the usurper's curse," he declares. A roar of victory erupts from Malcolm's army. Dunsinane has fallen. The nightmare is over. In the aftermath, Malcolm is crowned the rightful king of Scotland. He promises to heal the wounds of the nation, to restore peace and justice. The kingdom, once drenched in fear and blood, will rise again. But the ghosts of the past linger. Macbeth's name will not be forgotten. His ambition, his paranoia, his descent into tyranny, it will serve as a warning for generations to come. And so ends the tragedy of Macbeth, the man who sought power above all else, only to be destroyed by the very fate he thought he controlled. Few works in the history of literature have achieved the enduring power and cultural significance of Macbeth. Over 4 centuries since its first performance, Shakespeare's tragic masterpiece continues to captivate audiences, scholars, and artists. Its exploration of ambition, fate, guilt, and the nature of power has made it one of the most frequently performed and studied plays in the world. But Macbeth is not just a relic of the past. It is a living text, constantly reinterpreted and reshaped by different eras, political climates, and artistic movements. Its influence has stretched beyond the stage, into literature, film, philosophy, and even psychology. Shakespeare wrote Macbeth in the early 17th century, most likely between 1605 and 1606. The play was created during the reign of King James I, who had recently ascended to the English throne after the death of Queen Elizabeth I. Unlike Shakespeare's earlier history plays, which focused on English monarchs, Macbeth is set in Scotland, a deliberate nod to James. who was also James VI of Scotland before becoming King of England. King James had a particular interest in witchcraft, having even authored Demonology, a book about the dangers of witches and the supernatural. Shakespeare likely included the witches in Macbeth, not only to explore themes of fate and prophecy, but also to appeal to James's fascination with the occult. The play's themes of treason and kingship also resonated with contemporary audiences, particularly in the wake of the Gunpowder Plot of 1605, a failed attempt to assassinate James and overthrow the government. The story of a regicide and the inevitable downfall that follows would have served as a powerful warning against rebellion. Following its premiere, Macbeth became one of the most popular tragedies in Shakespeare's repertoire. Its fast-paced plot, dramatic supernatural elements, and psychological depth made it a favorite among audiences. The role of Macbeth quickly became one of the most coveted parts for actors, allowing them to showcase the full range of human ambition and despair. During the Restoration period, 1660 onward, Shakespeare's plays were often adapted to fit the tastes of the time. The poet and playwright William Davenant produced a heavily revised version of Macbeth in the 1660s, which included additional musical numbers and changes to the text. While some purists may frown upon these alterations, they demonstrate how Macbeth was already being reshaped to fit new cultural and theatrical expectations. By the 18th century, actors like David Garrick were bringing Shakespeare back to prominence. Garrick's performances of Macbeth were legendary, emphasizing the emotional intensity of the character. He removed some of the supernatural elements, focusing instead on the psychological torment of the protagonist. This marked an important shift in how the play was understood, less as a spectacle of horror and more as a deeply human tragedy. The Romantic period saw a renewed fascination with Shakespeare's original text. Actors like Edmund Kean and Henry Irving portrayed Macbeth as a deeply tormented figure, torn between his ambition and his conscience. This period also saw greater emphasis on Lady Macbeth, who became one of the most compelling female characters in theater. Actresses such as Sarah Siddons brought new psychological depth to the role, portraying her not just as a manipulative villain, but as a woman whose ambition ultimately destroys her. During the 19th century, theatrical productions of Macbeth became grander and more elaborate, featuring large battle scenes, intricate set designs, and elaborate costumes. While some purists criticized these spectacles for overshadowing the text itself, they made the play even more accessible and exciting to general audiences. At the same time, Macbeth was being increasingly studied in academic circles. Literary critics and philosophers began to see the play as more than just a story of political intrigue. It was a meditation on fate, free will, and the nature of evil. German philosopher Friedrich Schlegel and English poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge both praised Shakespeare's psychological insight, arguing that Macbeth was one of his most profound explorations of the human mind. With the advent of cinema, Macbeth found a new medium through which to reach audiences. Directors across the world adapted the play to film, each bringing their own cultural and artistic vision. One of the most famous adaptations came in 1948, when Orson Welles directed and starred in a noir-inspired version of Macbeth. Shot in stark black and white, Wells' film captured the play's eerie, nightmarish quality, emphasizing its themes of paranoia and destiny. In 1957, Japanese director Akira Kurosawa reimagined Macbeth in Throne of Blood, setting the story in feudal Japan. With its stunning cinematography and samurai-era themes, Throne of Blood remains one of the most visually striking and powerful interpretations of the play. Kurosawa's adaptation proved that Macbeth was a universal story, one that could transcend cultural and historical boundaries. Later in the 20th century, Roman Polanski's 1971 film version took Macbeth in an even darker direction. Released shortly after the brutal murder of Polanski's wife, Sharon Tate, by the Manson family, the film was filled with a raw, almost nihilistic violence. It was one of the bloodiest adaptations ever made, reflecting the chaotic and violent era in which it was produced. Beyond film, Macbeth became a crucial text in modern psychology. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung both studied the play, using its characters to explore themes of guilt, the unconscious mind, and the destructive power of repressed desires. Lady Macbeth, in particular, became a key figure in psychological studies of guilt and mental deterioration. Even today, Macbeth continues to be reinvented. Directors and playwrights have placed the story in modern political settings, drawing comparisons to authoritarian rulers and corrupt governments. In 2015, Justin Kurzel's film adaptation, starring Michael Fassbender, presented Macbeth as a war-hardened soldier suffering from PTSD, emphasizing how violence shapes his descent into tyranny. Meanwhile, Macbeth remains a staple in literature classrooms around the world. Its themes of ambition, fate, and morality resonate with new generations, prompting discussions about human nature and the consequences of unchecked power. In the age of social media and global politics, Macbeth's exploration of ambition and corruption feels more relevant than ever. In an era where leaders rise and fall amid controversy, and where ambition often outweighs morality, Shakespeare's tragedy serves as both a reflection and a warning. So, why does Macbeth continue to hold such power over audiences after 4 centuries? The answer lies in its timeless themes and Shakespeare's masterful storytelling. At its core, Macbeth is about the dangers of unchecked ambition. It shows how power can corrupt, how paranoia can destroy, and how guilt can consume even the strongest of minds. The supernatural elements, while thrilling, only serve to enhance the deeper psychological and moral conflicts at the heart of the play. It is also a play that adapts to every era, whether staged in its original form or placed in modern settings. Macbeth always finds new ways to speak to audiences. It is as much a play about 11th century Scotland as it is about modern politics, war, and the human condition. Ultimately, Macbeth endures because it is not just a story, it is a mirror, reflecting our fears, our ambitions, and the darkness that lurks in the human soul. And as long as people strive for power, struggle with guilt, and wrestle with fate, Macbeth will continue to haunt and captivate the world.